The second skill on the Unit 1 quiz had to do with midpoints. So if we start with the definition that congruent segments are two segments that have the same length, and we define a midpoint as a point that divides a segment into two equal parts, we're trying to find the exact middle of a segment. So that now we have two segments, and they have this little hash mark to indicate that they are equal. Now, we can also have something called a segment bisector. These might be lines or rays or other segments that intersect a segment at its midpoint. So if you consider these blue dots, that's the midpoint of this segment, and it is marked by a line. This blue dot is the middle of this segment, and that's a ray that crosses that midpoint. Here, this segment is bisected, or cut into two equal parts, by another segment. So to find midpoints, given some coordinates, we used this formula here. And basically how it works, if we are given a coordinate A and a coordinate B, we take the average of the x coordinates and the average of the y coordinates, or x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So an example, if we have these coordinates and we want to find the midpoint, we take 6 plus 3 divided by 2 for the x coordinate, and 4 plus negative 4 divided by 2 for the y coordinate. This gives us 4.5, 0. One more example, negative 1 plus 9 divided by 2, 3 plus 0 divided by 2. This gives us 4, 1.5. And that's the most basic example when they give you two coordinates and ask for the midpoint. Sometimes, though, they give a situation like this. Here's a segment AB, and they tell us that M is the midpoint, and they give us the coordinate here, negative 2, 3, and they give us the middle coordinate, 1, 0. So we're not going to be able to apply the formula in the same way. We're not going to be able to add and divide by 2. But what we can do is track the changes in the x coordinates and the changes in the y coordinates and repeat those changes. Let me show you what I mean. To get from negative 2 to 1, we added 3. To get from 3 to 0, we subtracted 3. We can do the same thing again. We can look at our x coordinate and add 3. 1 plus 3, our new x coordinate is going to be 4. If I look at my y coordinate 0 and I subtract 3, my new y coordinate is going to be negative 3. If I want to check my answer to see if it's right, then I can consider that these are the endpoints and I can add them together. Negative 2 plus 4 divided by 2. 3 plus a negative 3 divided by 2. If I did it right, I'll end up with 1, 0, which was the midpoint they gave me. Here's one more example. They tell us that M is the midpoint and has this coordinate 6, 1. And the first endpoint is x, 2, 7. So how do I get from 2 to 6? I add 4. How do I get from 7 to 1? I subtract 6. So let's do that again. Plus 4 to the x gives me 10. Minus 6 to the y gives me a negative 5. This is my other endpoint. If I want to test to see if it was right, 2 plus 10 over 2, 7 plus a negative 5 over 2, and this gives me 6, 1, which is my midpoint. So I did it right. Jumping to the review, this is what the problems look like. So given these coordinates, I add together the x's and divide by 2. That gives me an x coordinate of 1. And I add together the y's, 5 plus 1, and I divide by 2, and that gives me a y coordinate of 3. So the answer is B. The second question on the review, they didn't give me the endpoints, they gave me one endpoint and a midpoint. So I can take 2, 5 and ask myself, how do I get to 6, 9? I add 4 and I add 4. So I'll just repeat that, plus 4 and plus 4. And my new coordinate is 10, 13, which is the other endpoint.